A what? Okay. Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. How good and how pleasant it is when siblings can dwell together in peace. And this is our first attempt in a long time to do that on a Friday night. And I'm so grateful that you could all join us and that I can welcome you here into our sanctuary. For some more specific introductions, I'm going to call up our president, Ethan Shipp.
Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to our members and distinguished guests, both those who are available here tonight in person, as well as those of you who are tuning in from our live stream. Our annual Patriot Day service gives us a chance every year to wholeheartedly thank and honor the military, police, firefighters, emergency medical technicians, and other first responders who risk their lives for our safety and well-being every moment of every day. One night hardly seems enough to properly recognize you all for the great service that you do. So whether you're actively serving or happily retired, you and your families have our sincerest thanks. It's on the rest of us to take a moment where we can to thank and honor the men and women who tirelessly toil to make the world that we all share a safer place. I want to recognize a few individuals as well as some of the groups who serve. As I call on you or your group, I invite you, of course, to stand if you're comfortable at your seat and be recognized. First, I want to thank the current and retired members of our armed forces who guard our country against threats to our life and liberty. Please stand and be recognized. Thank you for your service. Let us thank the current and retired members of our police department who remain vigilant against threats to our community and maintain law and order. Please stand and be recognized. Thank you for your service. And let us thank the current and retired members of our fire department who selflessly brave life-threatening fires to rescue people from danger. Please stand and be recognized if you're here with us. Thank you for your service. And last, I do want to thank the current and retired members of our EMT services who safeguard our health by responding to medical emergencies wherever they arise. Please stand and be recognized. Thank you for your service. All right, last but certainly not least, I do want to specifically thank and recognize a few individuals in our congregation tonight. Namely, and of course you can stand as I call your name, Chair Ann Wheeler. Thank you. Supervisor Franklin. Thank you. Supervisor, is it Boyd? Beatty? Angry. Thank you. Thank you. Of course, Chief Newsham. Deputy Chief Phelps, and Delegate Guzman. Thank you very much. Supervisor Bodie, that was it, sorry. Thank you. All right. Thank you all from the bottom of our hearts. Traditionally, we ask the Chief of Police to share some words with us. Chief Newsham, if you're so inclined, I welcome you to join us on the Bema.
Good evening. I'm Pete Newsham. I'm the Chief of Police for the Prince William County Police Department. And I have to say that I am honored and humbled to be welcomed here in this place of worship to speak, and when we're recognizing our first responders. I think it's important on the eve of the 20th anniversary of September 11th that we talk a little bit about that. I can tell you my personal experience on that day. I was a district commander in Washington, D.C. I had responsibility for the Georgetown neighborhood of Washington, D.C. On that day, we all remember exactly where we were. The things that stand out in my mind from that day, first and foremost, when I reflect back, is the personal loss to our Americans. You think about the unforeseeable tragic events of that day. We had as many, close to 270 people on 4 planes that had gotten on those planes to take a trip from our East Coast to our West Coast. We had 125 people, mostly military officers, service military members at our Pentagon that went to work that day the way that they do every day to protect our freedoms here in our country. We had almost 3,000 people in the Twin Towers that lost their lives on that day. And anybody who has watched the news or any of the documentaries over the past few days, we've seen the personal impact that loss has had on families. So when we sit back and we reflect on September 11th, or at least when I do, what I think about is I think about that tragedy. I think about the loss of life. I think about the children who never got to know their parents. I think about the parents who lost their children. I think about, there's the tragedy. And then, when I think about it from a professional standpoint, it reminds me every single day when I come to work of the awesome responsibility that we have to protect our country. It's an eye-opener for us in law enforcement to ensure that we take threats to our community very, very seriously, to ensure that people are safe, to ensure that we're able to respond in the event of a tragedy. Before September 11th, we didn't know something like that could possibly occur. And then the last thing I think about when I reflect on September 11th is I think about the heroism. You think about the 40 passengers in that airplane over Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The way I understand the story is they received word that other planes had been involved in this terrorist incident. And they did what they could to prevent that plane from going into a highly populated area in our country. Talk about heroes. I think about the 125 folks that went into our Pentagon, the military, career military members that went there, that go in there every day to protect our country. And the fact that all they were doing was trying to protect us, and they fell victim to this attack. And then, of course, I think about our first responders. We talk about this in law enforcement quite a bit, that when others run away from danger, folks in law enforcement, folks that are first responders run towards it. That's exactly what happened on September 11th. 340 some odd firefighters, as many as 60 police officers lost their lives. Thousands of first responders, not only police officers, construction workers, welders, people that responded to that event lost their lives from breathing in the toxins when they responded to Ground Zero to try and first save folks that were in the rubble, and then to recover the bodies of those that were lost on that particular day. That heroism is incredible. And I have to say, for Ner Shalom, to take a day out of the year and to recognize not only those heroes, but the heroes that work in our communities every single day, I am humbled and I cannot thank you enough for doing that. The only thing you need to do to inspire a police officer is to say thank you. And by having us here today, you've done that. And I want to thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We begin our service tonight on page 120 and 121 with our Shabbat candle lighting blessing. And I'd like to invite up any members of Ner Shalom who have also served in the military to do our blessings and light our candles for us.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'kivanu lahadik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Amen. Page 125. Where has this week vanished? Is it lost forever? Will I ever recover anything from it? The joy of life, the unexpected victory, the realized hope, the task accomplished. Will I ever be able to banish the memory of pain, the sting of defeat, the heaviness of boredom? On this day, let me keep for a while what must drift away. On this day, let me be free of the burdens that must return. On this day, Shabbat, abide. Help me to withdraw for a while from the flight of time, contain the retreat of the hours and the days from the grasp of frantic life. Let me learn to pause, if only for this day. Let me find peace on this day. Let me enter into a quiet world this day. On this day, Shabbat, abide. And now that we've lit our Shabbat candles and set our intentions with the readings and the welcomes, we are ready to segue into the meat of our service with the Chatzi Kaddish on page 144. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah ve'alma divrach yirteh v'yamlich malchuteh b'chayechon uvyom echon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael bagala uvizman kariv ve'imeru amen. Yehesh merabba mevarach ve'alamu al me'almaya yitbarach ve'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar, v'yit'aleh, v'yithalal, shemei dekudasha b'richu. Leila min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'ama, ve'imeru amen. Please rise for the call to worship on page 146. Yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da 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 Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed. You may be seated.
Please join us on page 149. This is an hour of change. Within it, we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it, we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim. Page 151. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael.
On pages 152 and 153, we find the Shema, followed by the Ve'ahavta. We'll do the version that has more English, but just as a heads up, the English is slightly different, the way that Debbie Friedman wrote it, to the way that this book translates it on 154, but you can follow along probably better than you could in the Hebrew, so I invite you to prepare yourself for these words of Torah. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. And you shall love the Lord your God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And you shall take these words that I command you on this day. They shall be upon thy heart and upon thy heart. And you shall teach them diligently unto thy children. And thou shalt speak of them when thou sittest in thy house, when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up, and when thou risest up. And thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thy hand, and they shall be for frontlets between thine eyes. And thou shalt write them on the doorposts of thy house, and upon thy gates, and upon thy gates, that ye may remember and do all of my commandments, and be holy unto your God, unto your God, unto your God. You may be seated. On page 157, we read responsively. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth.
I have declared your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love.
From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way.
Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we obey our oppressive forces.
Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed.
Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and have peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea.
Micha mocha ba'elim Adonai, who is like you, O God, among the gods that are worshipped, who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, working wonders. Your children witnessed your sovereignty, splitting the sea before Moses and Miriam. This is our God, they cried. Adonai will reign forever and ever. Thus it is said, Adonai redeemed Jacob from a hand stronger than his own. Praised are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Page 160. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and raise us up our guardian to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life, to peace, evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, hapore sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Page 162. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. Beni uven bnei Yisrael Oti leolam, Oti leolam, Vishamru, V'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, La'asot et HaShabbat lidorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat la'asot et HaShabbat lidorotam berit olam. Uvayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash Shavat vayinafash v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat la'asot et HaShabbat lidorotam berit olam. We come now to the central portion of our evening prayer. The tefillah begins on page 164 and continues over the next few pages. Today is Shabbat Shuvah, so there are those indented parts we actually sing tonight. So prepare yourself for that as well. Adonai sefatai tiftahu fi agita hilatecha. Eternal God, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chaste Avot v'Imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava, Zachrenu L'chaim, Melech Hafetz B'chaim, V'chotvenu B'sefer HaChaim, Lema'ancha Elohim Chaim, Melech Ozer u'Moshiach u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Abraham ve'Ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh hakol atah Rav le'Hoshia, Morid hatah, Mechalkel chaim bechesed, Mechayeh hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim ve'rofeh cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Michamocha ba'al gevurot, Omidam melech, Melech mevit umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, Michamocha Afarachamim, Zocher Yitzurav, L'chaim barachamim, V'ne'eman atah lahachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, Ukroshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah, Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. You may be seated. We continue together on page 173. Disturb us, Adonai, ruffle us from our complacency. Make us dissatisfied with the peace of ignorance, the quietude which arises from a shunning of the horror, the defeat, the bitterness, and the poverty, physical and spiritual, of humans. Shock us, Adonai, deny to us the false Shabbat, which gives us the delusions of satisfaction amid the world of war and hatred. Wake us, O God, and shake us from the sweet and sad poignancies rendered by half-forgotten melodies and rubric prayers of yesteryears. Make us know that the border of the sanctuary is not the border of the living, and the walls of your temples are not shelters from the winds of truth, justice, and reality. Disturb us, O God, and vex us. Let not your Shabbat be a day of torpor and slumber. Let it be a time to be stirred and spurred to action. Baruch atah Adonai, Mikadesh HaShabbat. Page 179. Grant abundant peace to your people Israel forever, for you are the sovereign God of all peace. May it be pleasing, this is 178. May it be pleasing to you to bless your people Israel in every season and moment with your peace. In the book of life, blessing, peace, and prosperity, may we be remembered and inscribed by you, we and all your people Israel, for a good life and for peace. Blessed are you, Adonai, who makes peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamivarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. We take a moment now for silent prayer. You might use the words on pages 180 and 181, or the meditations of your own heart. Yehiyu leratzon imrei fi vehegyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri Adonai Tzuri v'goali. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, Adonai, our rock and redeemer. We turn our thoughts now to those who are in need of healing of mind, body, and spirit. I have on my list that we are saying a prayer for healing for Mary Kennedy, Rosalind Cantu, Mike Haug, Lori Perry, Nick Joliot, Ariel Batsluva, Rhoda Wessler, Skip, Kathy, and Jeffrey Brace, Rhonda Butler, Ricky Grant, Shoshana Bat Abraham, Minna Dornfeld, Juliet Origi, Leslie White, Ann Cohen, Charlotte Birch, Anita Ash, Joseph Matter, Daryl Swan, Doris Hudson Trujillo, Susan Smith, Mary Lou Manzelli, Kevin Kossoff, Devin Kennedy, Herb Leventhal, and Kylie Bean. If anyone else has a name they'd like to add.
Scott Sackers and Joe Martin.
Harold Street. Jonathan Siegel, Carol Lewis, and Bill and Jan Fink.
The Misha Berach is on page 371. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekol Mekor habracha le'imotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha la'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This week's Torah portion is Parashat Vayelech, or Deuteronomy chapter 31. Jews all over the world will read this segment of our Holy Scripture this Shabbat. Some out of the sacred scroll, some out of books, and some may not literally read it in its totality, but learn about it in Torah studies and sermons. We welcome our distinguished guests to share in this experience and learn about our Torah tonight. In Parashat Vayelech, Moses confers authority over the Israelites to Joshua. He knows his end is near, and he is preparing for his final address to the people, the song that we will hear beautifully chanted next week by our bat mitzvah. For this week, he warns the Israelites that they will sin once he is gone, but Joshua will nonetheless lead them with steadfast courage into the Holy Land, and that even when God hides God's face from them due to their idolatry, the opportunity to return to Judaism and have God's face returned to them is always available. The Haftarah, the reading from the prophets that we read on this special Shabbat, which falls between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, comes from Hosea chapter 14. It opens with the word shuvah, which some here may hear the similarity to our buzzword of the season, teshuvah. While teshuvah refers to the general act of returning, and sometimes we use it to mean repenting, shuvah is the imperative, the command to return to God. This concept of returning comes up a lot in the prophets, but this chapter of Deuteronomy is one of the few times in the Torah that Moses is so clear with the Israelites that he and God both know they will go astray without him, and they will need to return to the commandments. Midrash Tanhuma, a collection of ancient and medieval rabbinic stories explaining and expounding on Torah, offers the following scene. God said to Moses, "Such is the way of the world. Each generation has its teachers. Until now was your portion to serve me. Now has come the portion of Joshua, your disciple." Said Moses to God, "Master of the universe, if it is because of Joshua that I must die, let me become his disciple." God said to him, "If that is your wish, you may do so." So Moses arose early in the morning to Joshua's door, and Joshua was sitting and teaching. Moses bent his frame and covered his mouth, and Joshua did not see him. All of Israel came to Moses' door, but found him at Joshua's door. The people said, "Moses, our teacher, teach us Torah." A voice came forth from heaven and said to them, "Learn from Joshua." And they accepted it. So Joshua sat at their head, and Moses did not understand his teaching. After they stood up, the people of Israel said to Moses, "Moses, our teacher, explain the teaching to us." And he had to say to them, "I do not know it." Moses was stumbling and failing. At that moment, he said to God, "Master of the universe, Until now I have asked for life. Now my soul is placed in your hand. There are many lessons in the transfer of leadership from Moses to Joshua that appear in different ways throughout their scenes together, both in Torah and in Midrash. But this is perhaps the most important, to know when it is time to step aside. Norms change and rules change and society changes, and it is essential for leadership to keep up with those changes. When the teacher no longer understands their students, when the representative no longer understands their constituents, when the law no longer reflects the morality of the people, it is time for those leaders to humbly pass the torch. There are so many reasons this could be difficult. Obviously, pride is a big one, but it can be also difficult to determine when these disconnects are passing fads or youngsters just not understanding the broader stakes. It can be difficult to know how to nurture change and transition, how to prepare a new generation of leaders without condescending or repeating the same harm that may have been passed to us. It can be difficult even to recognize that the changes are happening beneath us if we are comfortable in our own status quo. But when we hold on for too long, we end up like Moses, so disconnected from the next generation's Torah that we cannot even follow along anymore. It is necessary for the health of the community, for the ability of those pushed away to return, that leadership changes and new voices be heard. May we lead with steadfast courage and appoint worthy successors. May we raise a new generation of leaders who succeed where we have failed. And may we always find our way back to the values that we set out to lead by in the first place. Amen and Shabbat Shalom. At this time, I'd like to invite up Harry Kantrovich for his annual address.
Good evening. Thank you once again for the opportunity to speak to you on such a solemn occasion as the 20-year anniversary of the September 11th attacks. I actually heard something today, don't call it an anniversary, because an anniversary is a happy occasion. So I guess it's going to be the 20th occasion of our attacks, September 11th attacks. And this evening, I'd like to spend a few minutes remembering the events of the day 20 years ago, remembering some of the most amazing accounts of heroism anyone has ever seen or heard, and remembering the sacrifices of some 3,000 men, women, children of all different ages, races, nationalities. I'd also like to focus on paying tribute to the lives lost that day, and since some of the heroic ways Americans have answered the call to duty. It was 8:46 a.m. in New York City when our otherwise normal morning was quickly transformed into a day that will live in our hearts forever. American Airlines Flight 11 slammed into the first of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. Unlike the attack on Pearl Harbor, the images of that day were instantly in the living rooms and on the computer screens of practically every American. At that time, no one could begin to grasp the remaining terror that would reveal itself over the course of that day. Soon to follow, a second aircraft, United Airlines Flight 175, crashed into the Second World Trade Center tower. And then we witnessed the collapse of both towers. Shortly thereafter, terrorists used American Airlines Flight 77 as a weapon to attack the Pentagon. As an aside, my daughter was supposed to be on that flight and changed her mind a couple days earlier. Then, United Flight 93, intended for the White House or the Capitol, crashed into a field in Pennsylvania countryside. Many brave Americans aboard United Flight 93 chose to fight and potentially save thousands of lives in the process. The images of that day will never leave us, but what also stands out is what we discovered about ourselves. In the face of so much terror, so many Americans rose above their fears. Their call to duty that day was to risk their own lives to save others. This quote from an unknown source says it all. On this day, September 10th, 20 years ago, 246 people went to sleep in preparation for their morning flights. 2,606 people went to sleep in preparation for work in the morning. 343 firefighters went to sleep in preparation for their morning shift. 60 police officers went to sleep in preparation for morning patrol. 8 paramedics went to sleep in preparation for their morning shift. None of them saw past 10 a.m., September 11th, 2001. In one single moment, life may never be the same. As you live and enjoy the breaths you take today and tonight before you go to sleep, in preparation for your life tomorrow, kiss the ones you love, snuggle a little tighter. Never take 1 second of your life for granted. I wish I knew who wrote that, because I'd want to thank him personally, or her. For all who have ever served or still serve in the uniform of a military member, police officer, firefighter, EMT, or paramedic, please stand. Stand up, Alec. First, I want to pay honor to the 13 heroes that gave their last measure of devotion as we exited a 20-year war in Afghanistan. I also want to pay honor to the Capitol and Metropolitan Police officers and National Guard members who placed their lives on the line January 6th, as well as the Pentagon police who often go without recognition. In previous years, I've done a roll call of those Prince William County heroes we have lost since September 11th, 2001. Heroes such as Officers Ashley Gwindon and Chris Young, firefighter Kyle Robert Wilson, EMT Cecilia Turnbaugh, Senior Chief Petty Officer Scott Dayton, and Ner Shalom's own Lance Corporal Colin Joseph Wolf, and many more. However, there are far too many to name, many whose names will never be on a wall or in the papers. I will leave it to you to think of any you may know and say a prayer for them and their families. I'd like to close with this quote from President John F. Kennedy. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and success of liberty. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you'll join me for a prayer for our country on page 376. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit. Amen. Just a few announcements. So we're doing reverse Tashlich, will be on Sunday. What time? 2 o'clock. At 2 o'clock. Beyond that, if you have not already registered either for reverse Tashlich or if you would like to attend the Yom Kippur service, let us know. I believe registration is already full for those days, so just keep us posted if you do want to attend and you haven't already registered, so we can talk it out with you. Anything else you can think of?
First day of religious school is Sunday.
First day of religious school Sunday. That's all for announcements. Thank you.
We turn now toward our concluding blessings. Aleinu on page 586. Please prepare yourself for the ark to be opened. Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, latet gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chalkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu, v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. You may be seated. We turn our thoughts now to those who are no longer with us in body, but remain with us in spirit. This week marks the yahrzeit, or the anniversary of death, for Bertha Herman, Aldo Ottaviano, Joseph Ash, Leon King, Isaac Bormel, Cynthia Albert, Fran Segal, Harold Herman, Pearl Lefferson, Joseph Lefferson, Sadie Milgram, Shirley Horowitz. It is the first yahrzeit of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and of course, it is the 20th yahrzeit of all those who passed, whose names we may not know in the attacks on September 11th, 2001. We are also still within a year of mourning for Patricia Michaels, Joe Davis, Kathleen Schindler, Jamie Bellitz, Neil Savage, Ann O'Neill, Bruce Schechter, Bernard Strassner, Ruth Sherman, Louis Aaron Honig, Jean Sullivan, Carolyn Rubel Magrum, David Nemero, Tom Lombard, Marion Finkel, Steve McGrew, Herbert Levy, Lynn Steffen, Gary Sullivan, Debbie Taylor Wright, and Mark Anderson. If anyone else has a name they'd like to add, please do so.
Marshall Curtis and Josette.
The Mourner's Kaddish is on page 598. Mourners and those who wish to join them may rise. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'almei almaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemed kudesha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim alenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav Hu ya'aseh shalom alenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Please be seated. Oseh shalom b'mromav Hu ya'aseh shalom alenu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru imru. Amen. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru. Amen. Our closing song tonight is God Bless America on page 680. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We will bless our refreshments from here, and then Juliet has set up a table outside so you can more safely take your masks off and enjoy some challah, and I don't know what else is out there. I made the challah. I didn't make anything else. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. L'chaim. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. The Te'avon. Shabbat Shalom.